I once thought the worst moment of a Christmas was when the turkey was overcooked, or when my mother started humming softly in the kitchen as a way to critique the chaos around her. But I was wrong. It's painful to admit because the truth is the worst moment happened right before my eyes, in a room full of family twinkling lights and laughter that tried too hard to feel real. Lily, my 8-year-old daughter, opened the last gift in the pile stacked around the foot of the sofa. She sat nestled in a mountain of colorful wrapping paper, her small hands carefully peeling off each strip of red tape. I remember sighing in relief at that moment, seeing her smile truly relaxed and happy for the first time after months of darkness. That moment felt like a reward. But then her smile vanished. Lily stared into the box, her body stiffening, shoulders hunching, eyes wide. Her face turned an eerie shade of pale. Then she turned her head, not screaming, not crying, just quietly, walking toward me, placing her cold little hand in mine and whispering so softly I had to lean down to hear Mom. "I'm scared." At that moment, the world around me was still loud, still festive, as if nothing had happened. The other kids were bickering over their toys, the adults clinking glasses, chatting boisterously. But I knew. It felt like the entire room tilted off its axis, and I stood still. I knelt down, looking into the box still cradled in her arms. At first, I didn't understand. It was an ordinary toy, a silver gray plastic airplane, the kind sold in every toy store. But then my eyes caught a crack on the right wing, a crack I'd glued back together when Jamie accidentally dropped it on the living room floor 3 months before he went missing. A pale blue ribbon was tied around the rudder. I'd tied it myself because Jamie said, "This plane needs a scarf like a superhero." The air drained from my chest. I trembled like Lily. I squeezed her hand gently and said, "Let's step outside for a bit." She nodded. No one noticed as we slipped through the hallway past the Christmas tree and the tray of cookies. Everyone was still wrapped in that loud, lively shell of the shell we'd just torn open. I took Lily to the car. I didn't trust my hands as I shut the door and sat down. In my hands was the toy, heavy as a stone. Lily curled up in the back seat, hugging her knees, face turned to the window. Something inside me shattered. I thought of Jamie, the quiet child, with deep eyes, always clutching that toy like a habit. He vanished during lunch break, leaving his backpack behind the school. No note, no trace. The past 6 months had been a nameless hell. The police found no leads. His classmates remembered nothing. David and I were nearly broken, living like shadows. Lily once asked, "Is Jamie coming back?" "Mom." All I could do was hug her and say maybe. I picked up the phone, my hands ice cold. I dialed 911. My voice, when I spoke to the dispatcher, sounded like a stranger's. I reported the toy, the distinct crack, the certainty of a mother. Less than 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up. No lights, no sirens. They arrived as if checking on a neighbor's barking dog. But I knew I felt it. This wasn't normal. One of the 2 officers approached. I stepped out of the car, clutching the gift box like a secret that needed unraveling. I don't recall everything I said. I only remember the feeling each word waded through icy water. I told them about Jamie, the crack, the gift from my niece Sadie, my sister Melissa's daughter. They asked, could Melissa have given this? I didn't answer right away. My mind pieced together fragments. Sadie couldn't have known it was Jamie's toy. Melissa had visited my house a few times, but not close enough to know my son's personal things. A cold instinct crept under my skin. I glanced at Lily. She was still silent. I understood the moment she recognized that toy was when her world shifted just like mine. Back in the house, I stepped into the living room as my mother was folding the tablecloth. I saw my father laugh loudly at a paper hat from a cracker. Everything seemed unchanged. I held the toy, looking at my sister Melissa talking on her phone in the corner, and then I was certain. No more doubt. Melissa knew where this came from, and I would ask. I would make her answer. I didn't scream. I didn't cause a scene. I just walked to David and whispered, "Can you take Lily to the car? I need to talk to Melissa." He looked at me, his gaze enough to know I was holding a rage I'd never felt before. As I approached my sister, I felt like I was walking on ice. Each step cracked beneath me, but I didn't get to ask. The police entered the house. No one spoke. The air dropped 10 degrees. They asked if Melissa and Sadie could speak privately. Melissa smiled a forced smile and followed. I stood, frozen. David placed a hand on my shoulder. Lily looked at me through the car window, her eyes red but not panicked. She was like me, silently enduring as everything fractured. I didn't believe in intuition until it was crushed inside me. 6 months before Christmas, on an ordinary day that seemed unremarkable, my stepson, Jamie, vanished in the brief gap between 2 classes. No sound, no trace, no warning. A disappearance so clean, so quiet, so absurd, as if he'd never existed. I remember it was a Thursday. I was washing dishes when the call came from Jamie's elementary school, where he was in 3rd grade. The principal's voice was oddly gentle, but I heard the strain rippling beneath each word. "Can you come to the school?" That was all. No details, no explanation, as if speaking would make something too real. When I arrived, David was already there. He stood in the hallway, gripping the strap of Jamie's backpack, a navy blue one with a spaceship print. "No Jamie?" I asked. David didn't answer. I entered the principal's office and saw Jamie's homeroom teacher crying. She said Jamie had asked to step out during lunch to grab something from his backpack. No one saw him after that. At first, I didn't believe it. Maybe Jamie wandered to the wrong classroom, or was lingering in the playground. I asked about security cameras. They shook their heads. The system was under maintenance, a cliché too flimsy for a real story. We, along with the police, scoured the school grounds, then spilled into nearby streets. They found Jamie's backpack discarded behind a bush at the corner of a street 2 blocks from the school. No blood, no notes, no papers, nothing. It felt like a part of my body had been removed silently, painlessly, leaving only a dizzying void. Jamie was never a loud child. He didn't act out, didn't fight, didn't complain. He went to school on time, came home on time, did his homework, bathed himself, hugged his pillow, and slept without needing a lullaby. Yet a cautious child like that vanished in broad daylight at a public elementary school without anyone noticing. I returned home with David and Lily in a haze. The kitchen was no longer a kitchen. The living room was no longer where we watched movies. The sofa where Jamie used to curl up reading now felt redundant. For a week, I didn't sleep. I lay on the floor of Jamie's room, head against his bed, smelling his pillow, folding his clothes left in the closet, checking his desk drawers, then checking again. I scrolled through photos on my phone for missed details. Once I thought I saw Jamie's shadow dart across the street, but when I ran outside it was just the wind. David spoke little. His silence was dangerous, not angry, not sobbing, just mute. One night I saw him sit in the car for nearly an hour, staring at the rearview mirror. I understood his pain, but I also understood mine. I wasn't Jamie's biological mother, but I was his mom in another sense. He called me Mom for the first time on a Sunday morning when I poured him milk and asked more pancakes, sweetheart. He didn't look up, just said, "Thanks, Mom," as if it were the most natural thing. I held that word in my heart for 3 years. Now that heart was tearing apart. The only person in the family who spoke of Jamie in a done-deal tone was Melissa, my sister. She came over a few days after the disappearance, bringing a box of cookies and empty condolences. "Maybe someone's just keeping him for a few days and will bring him back," she said, pouring tea as if discussing a lost puppy. I looked at her. I saw no pity, no worry, just awkwardness wrapped in pretense. Melissa was always easygoing, or easy on herself, I'm not sure. She had 3 kids, a husband who rarely came home, and a lifestyle I once called careless, but controlled. I'd helped her often when she was struggling, when her kids were sick, when bills piled up. But I never felt anything in return beyond limited gratitude. David didn't like Melissa. He once said, "You sacrifice too much for someone who never truly needs it." I'd argued back. But after Jamie vanished, I started recalling Melissa's poorly timed visits, her half-joking remarks, the times she glanced at Jamie and looked away. Still, in those first weeks, I wouldn't believe my sister was involved. I considered every possibility: a stranger, someone posing as family, or Jamie being lured away. But I never allowed myself to place Melissa in the suspect's seat. Until today. The police had little information. They interviewed other students, questioned neighbors, but no one saw Jamie leave. A girl in his class said Jamie walked fast, head down, holding his toy. The police asked who was with him. She shook her head. I didn't see. I spent hours in Jamie's room rereading his scribbled notes. One said, "If a stranger takes me, will you find me, Mom?" I don't know if I'd read it before, or if my mind conjured it. But I believed Jamie had been scared, had felt unsafe, and I hadn't been attuned enough to notice. Lily was the only one who dared ask aloud, "Jamie's not coming back, is he, Mom?" I hugged her silent. I didn't know how to answer. Every reassurance felt like a lie, and lying to her at that moment was the cruelest thing I could do. Those 6 months were a lightless dream. I went to work like a machine, came home like a ghost. David stopped watching the news, staring at the ceiling instead. Lily still went to school, but her handwriting worsened, and she stopped singing. I remember Jamie's birthday. We left a cake on the table. No one ate it. I lit a candle and let it burn to wax. Lily asked why I didn't make a wish. I said, because I don't know what to wish for anymore. Now I know. When I saw that toy in Lily's hands, when I recognized the familiar crack, I knew the only thing I'd wish for was to hear Jamie's footsteps in our hallway again. But to hear those footsteps, I had to trace the sounds swallowed 6 months ago. And the first thing I needed to do was confront Melissa, because only she had a reason to know where that toy had been kept. And only she had a reason to stay silent until now. I once thought the greatest pain was losing a child. But after that day, I learned there's a deeper pain than loss. It's knowing the person who made your child vanish is your own flesh and blood. Someone you grew up with, laughed and cried with, shared childhood years you thought would forever be the foundation of trust. After the police left with the gift box, the living room seemed to freeze. Conversations from small groups dwindled to murmurs. People glanced at each other, suspicious, anxious, but no one dared ask. No one dared touch the truth that had fallen like a curtain across the party. I returned to the sofa where Lily had sat. David stood close, his hand lightly on my back, like a silent signal I'm here. My eyes scanned each relative, pausing when they met Melissa. She stood by the dining table holding a glass of wine, her gaze distant as if nothing had happened. I couldn't tell if she was pretending ignorance or truly indifferent to the point of numbness. The second officer returned from the hallway holding a small card. He handed it to me, saying, "We found this taped to the bottom of the box. Looks like a gift tag." I took the card. The familiar handwriting read, "To Lily Mary Christmas Heart Sadi." My heart skipped. Sadi was Melissa's oldest daughter, 10 years old. She and Lily weren't close, but exchanged gifts on holidays. I glanced at Melissa. She'd seen me holding the card, but said nothing. I approached. "Melissa, can we talk privately?" She frowned slightly, looked around, then set her glass down. "What's wrong?" Her voice was irritatingly gentle. I didn't answer. I turned and headed toward the hallway leading to the back of the house. She followed. David trailed behind like a witness. We stopped in my father's old reading room. The door closed. Melissa crossed her arms, tilting her head as if waiting for me to explain why I was interrupting her holiday. That box, I began, gripping the card tightly. "It says it's a gift from Sadi to Lily." "Yeah, that's right. She wrapped it," Melissa replied, her shoulders shrugging slightly. "Did you know what was inside?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. She frowned, then sighed. "Sis, my house is full of old toys. I don't check every single thing Sadi wraps. She probably just grabbed something. No, there's no just here." My voice started to waver. "That's Jamie's toy. The one he had the day he disappeared. The crack on the wing, the tape on the rudder, I fixed those. You know that toy couldn't just show up at your house." Melissa was quiet for a moment. Then she pressed her lips together. "You're remembering wrong." "No, I'm not." David stepped forward, his eyes colder than ever. "Jamie never went to your house. So how did that toy end up with your kid?" Melissa looked at me, then at David. Her face paled. She turned away, placing a hand on the table head, bowed as if weighing something. "It was his mom," she said softly, each word pulled from her gut. "Jamie's real mom." The room went still. I heard my own heartbeat. "What?" "She called me a few months ago. Said she just wanted to see him once. Just an hour. No trouble. She sent money. I didn't ask, she just sent it. I needed the money. That month I was short with the kids' school fees piling up. I thought if it was just an hour, she'd bring him back." I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I stared at her, searching for a sign that this was a cruel joke. But no, she was serious. Melissa wasn't hiding her trembling. She stepped back, stammering. "But then, she didn't bring him back." I called. No answer. I texted. No reply. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking she'd bring him back tomorrow. Then the next day. Then I Didn't say anything. Didn't say anything, I echoed like a ghost. You let us believe our son was kidnapped. You let me think Jamie was dead. For 6 months, I had no emotions left to hold back. My eyes burned, but no tears came. David turned away, his fists clenched. I heard his breathing heavy and trembling. Melissa cried. Not her usual manipulative sobs. A low, desperate, silent cry. Sis, I didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do, I whispered. So you let us die a little every day, every night, because you didn't know what to do. The door opened. An officer stepped in. Sorry, but we need to speak with Ms. Melissa again. I nodded. I didn't look back. I walked out first, feeling my body oddly light, as if everything inside me had already fallen away. David said nothing, just walked beside me. When we returned to the living room, everyone was silent. They all knew. They'd all heard. Melissa was taken outside. No handcuffs. No fuss. But her steps were heavy, dragging a boulder of guilt behind her. Lily ran to me, hugging me tightly. I knelt, pulling her close, feeling her small heartbeat racing. I whispered, "Things will be different. I promise." And I knew after everything I had to do, what I hadn't dared hope for in 6 months, find Jamie alive or otherwise. But deep down I knew. That box wasn't just a reminder of my son. It was the first sign. And maybe Jamie was still alive. I once thought if miracles were real, they'd arrive with music from the heavens. Light streaming through windows, or at least a surge of joy filling my chest. But 3 days after Christmas, when the phone rang at 7 in the morning, the miracle came in a single curt sentence from the other end. We've found Jamie. I don't remember if I dropped the phone or set it down with trembling hands. All I know is I turned to David, whispering, "It's him. It's Jamie." He looked at me unblinking. For a moment I saw a spark of hope flare after months of his eyes holding only darkness. We raced to the police station like we were outrunning our past. There, in a plain room, a laptop sat ready on a table. A technician adjusted the audio. An officer stood in the corner. No one spoke much. They knew this moment wasn't theirs. I sat down David beside me, my hand gripping the chair's edge, until my skin blanched. The screen flickered. Seconds dragged like hours. Then the image appeared blurry at first, then sharpening. Jamie. He sat on a plastic chair, a faded yellow wall behind him. His hair was longer, his frame thinner. But those eyes, I knew them instantly. The eyes I'd gazed into every morning when I woke him for school. The eyes that sparkled when he talked about planets and spaceships. I choked. "Jamie!" He didn't respond. His lips were tight, his eyes fixed on the camera. Something in his gaze unfamiliar, wary, as if he was trying to confirm I was real. That this wasn't another trap. Then his voice came small, steady and colder than I'd imagined. She said, "You didn't want me anymore." She said she was the only one who wanted to keep me. Those words were a blade slicing through my efforts to stay composed. I swallowed hard, took a deep breath. "Jamie, that's not true." It was never true. David squeezed my hand under the table. I continued, my voice shaky but clear. "We never stopped looking for you. Not a single day. I swear." Jamie looked down his thin fingers, fidgeting with his shirt hem. He said nothing for a few seconds. Then he lifted his head. His eyes were wet. "But why didn't you come get me?" I exhaled as if punched in the chest. "Because I didn't know where you were. Because someone took you and no one told me. But now I know. And I'm coming. As soon as I can." David spoke, his voice calmer than mine. "We're bringing you home, Jamie. Whenever you're ready, we're here. Always." Jamie didn't answer, but I saw his lips move, then a slight nod. The screen went dark. But my world had just lit up again. 3 days later, we were at the train station, the closest pickup point the police could arrange. Officers escorted Jamie from Arkansas to Vermont. I didn't know what to bring, what to prepare. We brought only ourselves, me, David, and Lily, standing behind the yellow line in the biting cold of an early year morning. The station was small quiet. Other people milled about, none noticing the three of us standing like statues on the platform. Then the train arrived. The brakes screeched. My heart stopped. I saw the door open. A woman in uniform stepped down first. Behind her, a small figure appeared. Jamie. He stood on the step, looking around, clutching the strap of a faded canvas bag. I didn't know what he was searching for, truth, or one final lie. He didn't step down. His eyes scanned the crowd, Then Lily shouted Jamie and ran. Before I could stop her, she crossed the yellow line, rushing to her brother. Jamie flinched, stepping back. But when Lily threw her arms around him, he didn't push her away. He dropped his bag, hugging her back, his face buried in her shoulder. And for the first time since the video call, I saw his shoulders shake, not from cold, but from crying. I approached slowly. David followed silent. When I stood before Jamie, he looked up. "Mom," he said like a test. "It's me," I replied. I didn't dare touch him, not wanting to scare him. But Jamie stepped forward slowly, then leaned his head against my chest. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his warm breath, his racing heartbeat, and knew he was still my son. We said nothing more. Words were unnecessary now. We just needed each other. On the drive home, Jamie sat by the window, his hand never leaving Lily's. David drove eyes on the road, but I saw his eyes glisten. I just held Jamie's hand for the first time in half a year, without fearing I'd wake and find it a dream. Jamie hasn't talked much, but before stepping into the house, he hesitated and asked, "Can I sleep with the light on?" I nodded. "Light teddy bear, even Lily, if you want. Everything." He smiled, a tiny real smile. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside Jamie's room, listening to his steady breathing, Lily shifting in her blankets. And I thought maybe things aren't settled, aren't safe, but at least he's home. I'm not ready to forgive those who made my son disappear, but I'm ready to start again with him, with our family, with myself. Tomorrow I'll start asking, because Jamie didn't vanish on his own. And there are still people who need to answer. Not all that breaks makes a sound. Some cracks form silently underground, where no one notices, no one hears. But one day the earth shifts, and no one can stand still. It's been a year since Jamie came home. A year for us to relearn how to live together, not just under one roof, but in a space of jumbled memories. He still sleeps with the light on, still startles when a door slams or someone walks too quickly down the hall. David no longer forces himself to be strong, but he hasn't fully relaxed. I've learned to wait. Wait for Jamie to speak. Wait for Lily to stop fearing. Wait for myself to stop blaming. On an early winter afternoon, snow fell sooner than usual. The house was steeped in white and silence. Jamie was drawing in his room. Lily lay reading at my feet. David was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. That chime, slow, deliberate, pulled me back to a time before everything was upended. David glanced at me, setting the knife on the cutting board. I stood walking to the door. Through the glass, I saw two familiar figures, my mother and father standing close, holding a small box of pastries and an old album wrapped in brown paper. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there looking at them, the two who'd been my childhood pillars, then the first to turn away when I needed them most. David was behind me. He whispered, "I can tell them to leave." His voice wasn't angry, wasn't cold. Just a quiet protection. Before I could respond, Lily looked up from the living room and said simply, "If they're here because they love us, we can listen." Those words from an 8-year-old carried more weight than any advice I'd ever heard. I opened the door. My mother smiled a trembling smile. My father just nodded. No rushed hello or sorry, just a quiet presence as if they weren't sure they'd be invited in. I stepped aside. "Come in. The snow's getting heavy." We sat in the kitchen. David poured tea. Lily brought extra chairs. Jamie stayed in his room and I didn't call him. He'd come when ready. My mother placed the pastry box on the table. Not the Christmas cakes she usually made. Chocolate chip cookies, my childhood favorite. Meanwhile, my father pulled the album from the paper bag. Its cover was worn, corners peeling. He set it down silent. I flipped through the pages. Old photos, me and Melissa as kids playing in the backyard on a swing. My mother cutting our hair. One shot of Melissa hugging me from behind, lips pursed, but eyes sparkling. There was a time my mother said when our family wasn't like this. I didn't reply. I didn't know what emotion was rising in my chest, only that it softened like snow melting in early spring. My father spoke, his voice hoarse. "We were wrong to protect the wrong. To refuse to see your pain. Out of fear, shame, loving Melissa so much, we forgot you were our daughter too." I nodded. Not to agree, but to acknowledge I'd heard and understood. No one cried. No one rushed into hugs, shouting, or forgiving like in movies. We just sat 3 generations, 3 steaming cups of tea. My mother looked at Lily like she was a miracle she'd missed the chance to know. Lily smiled. She didn't grasp the adult complexities, but she understood the meaning of a glance of gentle silence. David said nothing, but I felt his hand on the back of my chair steady, like a reminder, you're not alone. Before they left, my father placed a hand on my shoulder, a brief, awkward touch, but genuine. My mother handed the remaining cookies to Lily, saying, share with your brother. Jamie didn't appear during their visit, but after they left, I heard his door open. He stepped out, hair mussed, barefoot. Was that Grandma and Grandpa Mom? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded like his grandfather's nod hours earlier. Small, quiet, but meaningful. I didn't ask what he thought. I just said thanks for asking. That evening, as I cleared the teacups, Jamie passed the table, hesitated, then said, can we have pancakes tomorrow? I smiled. Sure, but I'm adding blueberries, okay? He didn't reply, but I saw the corner of his mouth lift. And I knew, though we weren't fully healed, we'd taken a step small, but toward the light. I looked out the window. The snow had stopped. The front yard was pristine quiet. The house still had cracks visible and invisible, but they were being filled bit by bit. I don't know what tomorrow holds. But I know this when a child is brave enough to open their heart, when an adult is quiet enough to listen. Forgiveness needs no words. Just a nod. And late that night, as I checked the upstairs windows, I saw Jamie drawing next to Lily, both silent but sharing a single sheet of paper. On the white page, a small house emerged with a red roof, a blue door, a mother hugging 2 children, a father standing behind. And I knew we were still a family, not because we're perfect, but because we chose to stay. Tomorrow, I'll receive a letter, unexpected, uninvited. But it will be the final door to close before starting a new chapter. I once thought endings came like the slam of a door. Clear, final, like the close of an old book. But as spring crept into our backyard, I realized something simple, yet hard to accept. Real endings never resound. They happen quietly and shift so small you only notice them looking back from far away. Jamie is changing. Not abruptly, not easily, but clearly. He opens his bedroom window in the mornings, letting cool air slip through the curtains. He no longer flinches at a closing door, though he still keeps the nightlight on. He doesn't ask about his birth mother, nor does he avoid her name when it comes up. He just lives day by day like a child allowed to be himself again. One March morning, I caught Lily and Jamie on the back porch, hands, muddy cheeks flushed from the early sun. They were planting tomato seeds David had bought the previous weekend. Lily giggled as Jamie tried to dig with a toy shovel. And my son, the boy who once feared leaving the house alone, laughed too. I stood in the kitchen, hand on the glass door, watching them silently. I didn't call out, didn't join in. Seeing them like that was enough. A few weeks later, on a rainy evening, Jamie entered my room, hands behind his back. He hesitated. Are you busy, Mom? I shook my head, setting my book down. I'm always free for you. He pursed his lips, then held out what he'd hidden. A bracelet of red thread strung with small, colorful plastic beads. In the center were 4 white beads with black letters, MYREALMOM. I froze. Jamie said nothing. He just looked at me, eyes half expectant, half afraid, as if he'd wagered all his courage on that little bracelet. I reached out. For me. He nodded. I made it a while ago, but I was only ready to give it now. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist like it was a treasure. I didn't cry, though. My heart seemed to shatter and mend quickly, powerfully, silently. I hugged him, and Jamie, for the first time in months, leaned his head into my shoulder. Melissa was sentenced in mid-April. She pleaded guilty to charges related to obstructing the investigation and endangering a minor. The court gave her 18 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and a ban on contact with children other than her own. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to sit there hearing excuses. I'd already spent months asking why for a lifetime. Jamie's birth mother, who took him from school and lived under an alias for half a year, received 4 years in prison and a permanent no-contact order. She didn't cry at the sentencing. She just looked down as if she'd known the outcome long before. When I told Jamie, he just nodded. No joy, no sorrow. Just an acknowledgement that justice in some form had spoken. A few days later, my mother called. I saw her name on my phone screen in the late afternoon light. My hand hovered over the answer button. Then I pulled back. Not out of anger, but because I no longer needed explanations. I set the phone face down on the table, leaving it until the screen went dark. David passed by, not asking what I'd do. He just came close, hugging me from behind. His warmth was like an old, safe blanket from my childhood. I know it'll never be the same, he said, but we can be different and better. I didn't reply. I just nodded. Like Jamie. Like Lily. Like everyone in this house learning to say love through the simplest acts. One Sunday afternoon, Lily brought a blank sheet of paper to the backyard, along with crayons, and pulled Jamie outside. She said, "Let's draw our house." Jamie sat beside her. I watched from inside, not interfering. On the white paper, a house took shape, red roof, blue door smoke, rising from the chimney. A mother stood between two children, a father behind hand on their shoulders. No one else? No names? No labels? Just a drawing. That evening, Jamie knocked on my door. "Mom," he said, "you know what?" I looked up. "What?" He smiled. "I think I don't have to be scared anymore, because I know where I belong now." I hugged him, my grip just right. Not too tight to suffocate, but enough for him to feel there's always a place for you here. When the house lights dimmed, leaving only the faint glow of the hallway lamp, I sat in the living room, looking at the bracelet Jamie gave me on the table. I know it'll fade with time. The thread will fray, the beads will chip. But the message won't. My real mom. I didn't need to give birth to Jamie to be his mother. I just needed to stay when others left. I just needed to choose love every day, easy or hard. And he, in his own way, chose me back. We lost him, found him, and nothing in us is whole. But love doesn't need to be whole. Love just needs to be true. As I write this story, I'm not just recounting a child who went missing and returned. I'm telling of the wounds we hide, the betrayals from unexpected places, and the extraordinary strength of love, capable of piecing together shards that seemed beyond repair. My family's story isn't perfect, but it's real. And what gives me the most faith after everything is the choice to forgive, to stay, to love, despite the lingering pain. I believe if you've ever been a mother, father, sibling, or loved someone like they were your own, you'll find a piece of yourself in this journey. If this story touched you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts, or simply a period to let me know you listened. Don't forget to follow the channel to join me in continuing to tell stories of family loss and what's worth holding on to. Thank you for staying until the end.